From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Pope Francis died yesterday, just one day after the Easter holiday. If you recall, he had been battling pneumonia for a while, and the Vatican reports he died from a stroke as well as heart failure. He was last seen in public on Easter Sunday when he made an appearance in St. Peter's Square in Rome. Idaho Catholics and Catholics all around the world have been in mourning since he passed. Joining us now to talk more is Deacon Scott Pearhill. He is the Director of Communications at the Roman Catholic Diocese of Boise. He is also the editor of the Idaho Catholic Register. Deacon Pearhill, I want to welcome you to the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Deacon, can you tell us a little bit about Pope Francis? Because he was the first pope from the Americas, coming from Central America, and that was really breaking with what I think 1,000 years of tradition with a pope being from Europe.
Right. The church certainly had a long line of Italian popes until St. John Paul II from Poland. He's often called the Pope of Surprise or the Pope of Surprises. And one of the first surprises was that we had an Argentinian pope who knew the hearts and minds of people who speak Spanish, as well as the hearts and minds of those all around the world. But very interesting for the Catholic Church now to have someone from the Southern Hemisphere and from the Americas. Yes, indeed.
And he was also a Jesuit, and he was the first Jesuit pope. For folks who are not Catholic, tell us about the Jesuit order.
Right. So the Society of Jesus, often called the Jesuits, was founded by Ignatius of Loyola, who was at the end of the 1400s and into the 1500s. And it was another movement within the Catholic Church to help people grow close to Jesus in a particular way. The Jesuits tend to be teachers, and Pope Francis, my goodness, was certainly a teacher. It seemed like we always had a new document coming out from him being published that we couldn't keep up. The Jesuits are often at universities. You might know of, for example, Gonzaga University. It's a Jesuit institution. Yeah. And he was the first Jesuit pope. Yeah.
Well, right, which was again something unique about him. One of the things that I think always stood out about Pope Francis was his humility. For example, right? When he became pope, he continued to wear things like simple clothes, right? I mean, like we all saw his sturdy black shoes. He didn't wear.
That's right.
Right.
Just so many examples from those first days. When he was elected pope, on the day he was elected pope, he asked the people to pray for him as well as praying for them. And then he immediately caused shockwaves because he did not move into the Vatican apartments. They're very grand. Instead, he moved into the Vatican guest house, the Santa Marta house, where actually when the conclave happens in a few weeks, that's where all of the cardinals will stay. They're sort of like, if you will, little hotel rooms. And he moved himself into a little room that actually is quite simple, monastic, you could say, and which has many more people in it. He said right from the beginning that he wanted to be in connection with people, so he couldn't imagine secluding himself. He just was surprising right from the very beginning.
Well, I think one of the things too was how popular he became with non-Catholics, Deacon.
Yes.
Do you think that this goes back to, as you just mentioned, right, how he wanted to be of the people, and he really was a pastor at heart?
I think that's a perfect description.
So why do you think that spoke to so many people, in particular people outside of the Catholic Church?
Yeah, he was a pope who went to the margins of society. He went to people outside of the Catholic Church. He went to many nations that had never before received a papal visit, often where there was trouble, where he could encourage and call for peace. I think that he recognized his mission, and the mission of Jesus is to all people. And so he took care of and was present to all people in addition to Catholics. And so I think people found that very wonderful. And as you mentioned, he was very humble, and he emphasized humility. He emphasized forgiveness. He emphasized mercy. he created a year of mercy, a Jubilee year of mercy in the Catholic Church between December 2015 and November 2016, an entire year just to have people renew in their sense of being compassionate and merciful to others. So we
Hmm.
celebrated that year of mercy. And one of the saints that was canonized during that year of mercy was Mother Teresa of Calcutta, the perfect exemplar
Hmm.
of that very message. Yeah, that's who he was.
So I think that it's fair to say that all popes um, don't go unscathed. And Pope
That's right.
Francis, right? I mean, I think that's a fair statement. But Pope Francis, his 13 years as the head of the church was not without controversy. And
Mhm.
in particular, there are many conservative Catholics. There's a large portion of American Catholics who are conservative, and they really
Mhm.
did feel as if Pope Francis was leading the church in the wrong direction. On the other side of that, you had more liberal Catholics who wanted him to, frankly, do more than he did
Right.
to move the church
Right.
into what they're saying modern times, right? Like allowing women to be priests, allowing priests to be married, just for examples. With all of that being said, how do you think he navigated that? Because again,
Yeah.
he led with such humility and
Yeah, let
grace.
me respond to that. Yeah. Um, I think that no one was perfectly satisfied with Pope Francis. That, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
people who had a more conserving perspective were at times frustrated with him. People that had a very progressive and forward-looking perspective were at times frustrated with him, and that probably means he was doing something right. That nobody was completely happy, and I think that the terminology that we tend to use in America, it's very understandable. It's the political lens through which we see our landscape. We are in America. We are political animals. Um, they don't fit. The political lens doesn't fit well to characterize who Pope Francis was.
Hmm.
He was representing the gospel, and the gospel doesn't fit well into political platforms. And I think because he went out to the margins and called people to the heart of Christ, there were many who were upset with him for doing that. But he was relentless in making sure that people knew that everyone had a right to encounter Christ. And that's what he tried to promote in the church. And so, quite naturally, some were upset with him. So, I always take it out of the political lens because, as you can tell, it's just not a lens that can accurately describe the richness
Hmm.
of someone like the Pope. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about Pope Francis and his illness. He'd been sick since about
Yeah.
February, and
Right.
we really hadn't seen him in public for quite a while, right? And then on Easter
Mhm.
Sunday, he's in the so-called Pope Mobile, and he's out in St. Peter's Square. And I have to tell you, Deacon, as a Catholic myself, I saw that. I thought, oh my gosh, okay, he's on the mend. He's out among the people. What was that like for you? To see him once again where he wanted to be among the people.
Yeah, no doubt. It gave a lot of people hope. He participated remotely in some of the Easter celebrations. He wrote the reflections for the Stations of the Cross that took place outside at the Colosseum. It was a candlelight ceremony. It was so beautiful. There were thousands upon thousands of people there, and the little reflections that they heard came from Pope Francis. So people might have assumed he was, as you say, on the mend, and so that caused shock when we woke up
Hmm.
yesterday. It seems like already a week
Yesterday,
ago.
I
Yeah,
know.
when we woke up yesterday and found out that he had died, it was like a member of our family had died, and there was a lot of sadness and grief. And I think that grief is still going on now. Yeah, he was a person of the people, and he always wanted to be around the people, and he stretched himself to be available, even when he was literally on his deathbed. And so this is a pope who died in office, as most popes do. Even though he was in bed at the time when he died, you could say he was on his feet ministering. He died on his feet
Hmm.
ministering until the end. Something really to be noticed. Yeah.
I want to talk before I let you go about what happens next, in particular
Yeah.
for non-Catholics. So there's basically 9 days of mourning. The Pope's funeral will be Saturday. He will lie in state where people will be able to see him. One of the
Mhm.
things, again, getting back to his humility, he is in a simple casket, and
Yes,
he's not even going to be. And we should say he's not being buried at the Vatican. He's being
that is
buried
correct.
in a church in Rome in a very simple casket. Again, this
Yeah.
is so different, breaking from tradition. Does that surprise you?
Um, he's the Pope of surprises, but
Yeah.
having had him as Pope for 12 years and 1 month, we shouldn't be surprised, but we are surprised. And maybe, and I want to say something about where he's being buried because it was a church that he absolutely loves, and I'll say something about it
Hmm.
in a moment. But, Pope Francis, in many ways, um, tried to give us a window into the God of surprise, the God who surprises us with his
Mm.
mercy, with his steadfast love. That's what he tried to do as the Pope of Surprise. So yes, as he was being buried, or as he was dying, he created actually a document that said where he wanted to be buried, and that was at Saint Mary Major, the basilica, the papal basilica of Saint Mary Major, where he went before every trip where he traveled. He went and prayed before an icon of the Blessed Virgin that has the name Health of the People, at Salus Populo, and he would go and pray there for safe travels. And when he returned, he prayed in thanksgiving for being brought back safely. And he often prayed there for
Mm.
the health of the people in Rome and in and around the world. And he was there so often that as this week, or actually no, excuse me, it was before this week, but when he was released from the hospital, he made a visit to that church
Oh,
right
that's
away,
right.
and that's where he wants to be buried. Now, I do have to say, from the perspective of people in Idaho, this is still a very big church, the Papal Basilica of
Right.
Saint Mary Major, but but far less grand than Saint Peter's. Yes,
Yeah. I have less than 2 minutes left with you, but I want to quickly talk about the conclave. This is
yes,
where
sure.
all of the cardinals from around the world will come together. They are literally locked away with no
Mhm.
access to the outside world until they come to an agreement about the next pope. Do we know yet when this will take place?
No, an exact date hasn't been set yet, as far as I know. But what happens right now, and this is really important to say, we don't just move on to the conclave. Um,
Right.
we concentrate on the Pope who has died. There will be his funeral. The Vatican has announced now that the funeral will be on Saturday. His body will be moved from St. Martha's House, the quarters that people stay in when they're visiting the Vatican, where he actually lived in a small room. Um, his body will be transferred from the chapel there to St. Peter's tomorrow. The funeral will be on Saturday. There is a 9 day novena, 9 days of prayer that are
Mhm.
prayed for the Pope. And then after those 9 days, after people have had a chance to grieve, then the conclave arrangements will begin. The conclave will take place in the Sistine Chapel. Conclave means conclave with a key. And as you say, they lock
Right.
the doors ceremonially. And then the cardinal electors will begin the process of voting for a new pope, which almost always comes from among them. I think back maybe in the 1300s, there was one time when they chose a pope not from among their own number, but so one of those cardinal electors will be elected the next pope. That's right.
Well, I want to thank you so very much for speaking with us today. What a legacy that Pope Francis has left for all of us. So thank you so much, Deacon, for your time today.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor.
We've been speaking about the passing of Pope Francis with Deacon Scott Pearhill. He is the director of communication at the Roman Catholic Diocese of Boise. And he is also the editor of the Idaho Catholic Register. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.